Hey there, today's video is on por and para. We're going to focus on the rules for each and using examples for each so you can kind of get an idea of how they are used. Por is used for cause or motive. If you could substitute due to in the English sentence, you're going to use por. For example, no fuimos por la tormenta. We didn't go due to the storm. Por is also used for duration or length of time. Estudié por 2 horas. I studied for 2 hours. On this one, note, it's a personal preference. You could leave the word por out and just say estudié 2 horas, and the sentence would also be correct. Por is used in phrases like in the morning or in the afternoon. For example, estudié por la noche. I studied in the evening. Por is equivalent to through, along, by, and around. This one is a little bit difficult for us English speakers because these words do not mean the same thing. You'll find, however, with context, you can figure out the meaning. For example, camino por el parque. I am walking through the park. Por is used to identify the immediate object of an errand. Fui al mercado por la leche. I went to the market for milk. Por is used when we're talking about exchanges. Pagué $5 por esos chocolates. I paid $5 for those chocolates. Por is used when we're talking about a substitute or working in place of something. For example, trabajé por ella porque estaba enferma. I worked for her because she was sick. Now note, I'm saying I worked for her, not in the sense that I am her employee. I'm saying I worked for her in the sense of instead of her because she was sick. Por is used to identify the mode of transportation. Viaje por avión. I traveled by plane. Por is also used for number, measure, and frequency. If you could use the English word per, you're going to use por. El peregrino puede volar 83 metros por segundo. The peregrine can fly 83 meters a second. Last of all, por is used for mistaken identity. La gente lo toma a Ana por su hermana, which means people mistake Ana for her sister. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of time to practice your verb conjugations, and at the same time you're going to substitute por in each sentence and also try to identify the reason for the use of the word por. Ana walked along the beach, and here you can use either andar or caminar for walked. So we could say Ana anduvo or Ana camino por la playa. And again, the rule is it's the equivalent of through, along, by, or around. We didn't swim for the red signal indicating danger. And you notice I have a typo. It should be indicating danger. And the verb for swim is nadar. No nadamos por la señal roja que indica peligro. And here, we could have substituted due to, therefore we know we're going to be using the word por. I prefer to travel by plane. Go ahead and fill in the blanks. And if you need help with the verbs, you're going to use preferir and viajar. Prefiero viajar por avión, and we used por because we're identifying the mode of transport. Marcos worked for 8 hours last night. And you're going to be using the verb trabajar. So, Marcos trabajo por 8 horas anoche. And again, this is because we're talking about duration or length of time. And remember, it's equally correct to say Marco trabajo 8 horas anoche. Using the word por is a personal preference. Next, I have to go to the market for bananas. You're going to be using the verb tener and the verb ir. Tengo que ir al mercado por las bananas. And we're using por because we're identifying the immediate object of an errand. I always mistake Matt Damon for Mark Wahlberg. You're going to use the verb tomar. Siempre tomo Matt Damon por Mark Wahlberg, and we're using por because we're discussing mistaken identity. I like to walk in the morning. You're using the verbs gustar and caminar. Me gusta caminar por la mañana, and we're using por because it's an expression like in the morning. I used butter for or in place of lard in the recipe. You're going to use the verb usar. Use la mantequilla por la manteca en la receta. And we're using por because we're talking about using one thing in place of another. Alice received a ticket for driving 70 miles an hour. And you're going to use the verb recibir. Ana recibió una multa por manejar a 70 millas por hora. The first por identifies cause or motive. The second one is per. It's best to exchange dollars for pesos before traveling. And here you have 3 verbs, ser, cambiar, and viajar. Es mejor cambiar dólares por pesos antes de viajar. And we're using por because we're talking about exchange. We went or we passed through customs. And you're going to want to use the verb pasar. Pasamos por la aduana, and we're using por because it's equivalent to through. We could not go on vacation because of the pandemic. You're going to use the verbs poder and ir. No pudimos ir de vacaciones por la pandemia, and we're using por because we could have substituted due to. Now, para is going to be the subject of our next slide video presentation.